UK's population is set to rise to 72.5 million by mid-2032. Incredible figures. Look at that. It's like an Elon Musk rocket taking off. The projection released by the Office for National Statistics today is driven almost entirely, in fact, it is entirely by net migration, with a 5 million increase in the next 10 years. But that's actually 10 million coming in and 5 million going out, with births and deaths basically on parity. And we can speak now with GB News' political editor Chris Hope. And also I'm joined in the studio by the chairman of the new Great British Political Action Committee and, of course, the former Reform UK deputy leader and Brexit policy MEP, Ben Habib. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Chris, let's start with you. For the benefit of those tuning in for the first time, the numbers out today are simply astonishing. Here we go again. The lunatics have taken control of the asylum system. They said they'd take control of our borders, and they've utterly and abjectly and provably failed.
Martin, great to see you again. And you're not quite right to say next 10 years. It's 2022 to 2032. So the first 4 years of that period, or 3 years, have been under the Tory government. Now, what happens here is the ONS have looked at current government policies and projected forward based on current policies. They're not predictions, they're projections. Now, if the government changes policy and a white paper, which is basically a law on net migration, is expected in coming months, these figures might well come down. I doubt they're going to go down to the level that you were talking about previous hour,
about me. I mean, the
fewer than 100,000 a year, but certainly they may well come down. The government itself, Keir Starmer's spokesman told us repeatedly, these are staggeringly high numbers. They said that when the Tories came in 2019, compared to when they left office, figures were 4 times bigger than when they came in. Chris Philp, the Tory Shadow Home Secretary, says this can and must be stopped from materialising, these figures, over the next till 2032. And he says there should be a hard cap on visas each year. People like Ben Habib will say you've lost all right to dictate on this policy, Chris Philp, because of your failure over the past 14 years. Nigel Farage, the Reform leader, who I've been speaking to for his programme tonight, you'll see that live at 7 or on the channel at 7 p.m. tonight. He says our quality of life is declining due to the population explosion. It's the biggest issue facing our country. It's understood by the government. The question is, have they got the willpower to tackle it? We'll find out soon.
Well, I think we know the answer to that. Let's talk to Ben Habib about that now. Time and time again, government after government, Prime Minister after Prime Minister have made the same empty promises. Getting to the point now where it feels like the definition of insanity. We repeat the same thing and expect a different outcome. These numbers are astonishing. The numbers are going up and up and up. Do you think we will ever take back control?
Well, I mean, we can talk about that when we talk about the Great British PAC, because I think part of the problem here is a political class that simply doesn't have the courage to do the right thing for the United Kingdom. Every single sane-minded individual in this country knows we've got to put up our borders. We will cease to be a country if we don't do it. There was a poll, I think you would have seen the results in the Daily Telegraph yesterday, which polled 55% of British people want a border emergency called to shut down our borders, detain and deport people who are in this country illegally. 76% of Reform and Tory voters want that to be implemented. That was in the Telegraph, as I say. Yes, I see Christopher quickly fact-checking me, but it's true. And that's what the people want. But the political class isn't there. And when you talk about 5 million additional migrants coming to this country, as you rightly pointed out, that's the net figure. So when you talk about the cultural changes taking place, it's much bigger. It's more like 10 million. And that 10 million means you've got population replacement taking place. British cultural values are being set aside. Our nation is changing in a way that we couldn't begin to recognise it. And we're not moving forward as an integrated, settled, homogeneous culture or country. We're moving forward, as I've repeatedly said, and it is deeply dangerous, in silos of multiculturalism, where lots of different cultures, and it's not just Islam versus Christians, it's lots of different cultures that have come to this country, all operating independently of each other, all operating independently of the United Kingdom, and being given a regulatory and legal framework which protects them, which promotes them in doing all of that. And we saw how brilliantly Trump, on his first day, one of the first things he did, apart from saying the obvious that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, you know, what is our world come to when the President of the United States has to say that at his inauguration speech? But the next best thing he did was to get rid of affirmative action, progressive discrimination, this whole DEI nonsense. And DEI, coupled with this rampant immigration that we've got, is going to be the end of this country.
It is not, though, is it? I mean, it's not going to be the end of this country. I mean,
it'll be the end of the country as we know it.
ECHR is why you can't deport, or these European courts. I mean, we can't just send them across back to where they came from without. Your plan is to leave the ECHR first, I suppose.
So I mean, there are a number of things we can do. Suella Braverman, when she first drafted the Illegal Migration Act, when it was a bill, it required the Secretary of State to detain and then deport. When it became an act, it actually the Secretary of State has the option to detain and deport. Now, they're two very different sets of wording, and the first wording was the correct wording, and we should have gone with it. There is nothing to prohibit us, Christopher, from detaining every illegal migrant in this country. Nothing. There is nothing obliging us to put them up in hotels to come and go as freely as they want. Next door in Altrincham, you'll remember the story a few months ago, a hotel was taken over next door to a child's girls' school. I mean, how insane is that? And then if something untoward were to happen, you'd get Keir Starmer on the airwaves chastising the people of Altrincham, categorising them as far-right, and blaming them for what followed. What we've got to do is settle this country. This country is not settled. And if we want to have an understanding of where we're going, if we don't settle it, all we have to do is look across the channel and look at what's happening in France. Every time there's anything between any ethnicity, and they've got multiple ethnicities like we have, but they've got a much bigger problem, France goes ablaze. From Marseille to Calais, there's inter-ethnic violence, draconian policing then being deployed, and I can see that being called for in this country. We don't want draconian policing. We want the root of the problem addressed, so we don't need draconian policing.
All right, Ben Habib, you have launched something, you're the co-founder, I believe, of something called the Great British Political Action Committee, the Great British PAC. This is, of course, following the PAC movements in the United States. There's an article out today saying, could Ben Habib be the man to unite the right? But surely to do that, you've got to stop falling out with Nigel Farage.
Listen, I love Nigel. I don't know what Nigel thinks of me, but I love Nigel. It's not about friends, political allies, comrades. It's not about that. The Great British Political Action Committee is about country before party, and it has three principal aims. The first is to shift the centre of gravity of acceptable political discourse in this country to one that is anti the liberal global order, to one that puts the United Kingdom first, believes in strong borders, and will champion an independent, sovereign, prosperous United Kingdom.
Now, I noticed that you signed a letter the other week, and the signatures of that letter were very interesting. So Nigel Farage was one of them, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg was one of them, Suella Braverman was one of them. Is this a movement to unite the right of the Tory party and reform?
So this is a movement to do what's right by the country. Move the political discourse to a position where we can do the kinds of thing Trump is doing across the Atlantic. That's the first thing. The second thing is to create policies, and we're going to have a platform which are grassroots-based, people of the United Kingdom feeding policies back to us at the top of the pack, and we will then use that to empirically support or set aside policies that we've got, form new policies. And then the third aspect, of course, is you can have all the best purpose, you can have the best policies, but if you don't have the right people, you won't be able to deliver them. So the third bit of the pack is going to be identifying people who can be future leaders, MPs, training them, getting them ready to take office.
So are you a party? We in the UK, we don't understand what PACs are. You're not. So you're doing what you criticise Reform for being, which is a company, or...
No. We're not. We will not be standing candidates. Right. We will be setting the discourse based on the democratic wishes of people's policies coming to us from the grassroots. Okay. And then we will be using that to move the centre of gravity of political debate so that basic things like calling a border emergency can be done by our political class, ditching DEI, ditching net zero. And then we're going to pressure. So uniting the right is not about pleading with Nigel to get on with Kemi or with Kemi to get on with Nigel. It's about pressuring both the Conservative Party and Reform UK to stay true to the people of this country. OK, gentlemen, we have to leave it there, but stick around. I want to bring in my next guest now. That's the lecturer in sustainable construction and climate change, John Grant. John, it's been way too long. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and all the rest of it. So You've heard us go through this data today. It's simply astonishing. 10 million extras coming to Britain in the next 8 years. That's completely unsustainable, is it not?
There's a lot of rounding going on here. You know, I've got to say that the data you're looking at is from, and one of your speakers just said from 2022 to 2032. We're actually in 2025 now, which actually means that of that 4.9, we've already gained about 1.5 million people. So a significant proportion of that 4.9 has already been grown, and I don't see it. You know, so before we start sort of losing our heads over
those are the numbers.
4.9 growth, we're already solidly into that, and we're managing.
We are, which we all, go on.
So yeah. Thanks for the time. But so I think you don't want to sort of go off half-cocked here in that 4.9. First of all, that's 100,000 less than 5. So please stop rounding it up to 5. 100,000 people is a lot of people, and
there'll be more than 100,000 people here that we haven't been able to track. But on you go.
Yeah, well, we have. I mean, these are the numbers. You wanted to use the numbers. So 4.9 minus the 1.6-ish growth that we've had since 2022. It's a much smaller number to manage. Then the people that are coming in tend to be young, fit. They want to work. The actual immigrants that want to work, they're the sort of people that we want in our economy if we're going to grow it. We've got an aging population. We need to look after those. And, young, fit people bringing money and effort and energy into our economy is part of what a growing economy looks like. My family came over in that decades ago and added to this country. We're a different culture, and we added to this country.
John, I hate to rain on your parade, but again, the facts tell us that it's around about 15% of immigrants since 2018 have come here to work. The vast majority are students or family members, and there are a growing number that aren't working. It's going through the roof. And of those that do come, they tend to be ostensibly lower skilled, lower paid, that contribute less. That is the fact of the matter.
Yeah, we do have, but we have a shortage of those since we stopped letting those kind of people come across from free movement in Europe. We are struggling a little at those lower income groups, and I just think that there is another side to this argument. And first of all, rounding it up to 10 million immigrants is just terrifying when we're the number isn't that at all. In though that when you have to look at the net growth of our country, not the total number of foreigners, which is really uncomfortable when it's caged like they're kind of the enemy. No, I'm not the enemy.
No, John, facts aren't racist, numbers aren't racist. Immigration numbers, 9.914 million. So yes, 86,000 shy. There are 1 million people in Britain that we have no idea where they are and who they are, and that's the Home Office's own estimate. So 86,000, not worth arguing about. John Grant, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much indeed for your time.